Hey everyone, Lloyd Smucker here representing you in the 11th District in Pennsylvania. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I'm going to be reading a letter from a constituent and then talking about my response and thoughts in regards to that letter. This is something we do on a regular basis. By the way, we receive up to an average of about 300 inputs from constituents on a daily basis, letters, emails, phone calls, whatever it might be. We try to respond to every single one of them. We're up to, in the 3 years that I've been in office, 3.6 million communications with constituents from our office. So we appreciate all of those inputs. That communication with constituents is absolutely critical to me doing my job well, and so I appreciate it. Today, this is a letter from an individual in Peckway, Mr. Phillips, and he writes, I was disappointed in your response to my submission to your impeachment survey. Unlike you, I reserve judgment until all facts are known. Apparently, you have predetermined your position without waiting for all the facts. I had hoped that I could depend upon you to make a decision in the country's interest after all the facts are known, rather than a knee-jerk partisan reaction. You were elected to represent all your constituents to the best of your ability and in the national interest. So, obviously this is a criticism of a comment I made or decision that I made, but there's a lot in here that we can agree on. And in fact, I always appreciate the opportunity to be your voice. I was elected to represent my constituents, those who reside in the district that I represent, to the best of my ability and in their national interest. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And again, this communication is critical for me to be able to do that effectively. He also talks about impeachment as being very, very important. This is a decision that affects the country, and the decision that we make is a decision that is going to be in the country's interest, are the words he used, and very, very important. I think, and I agree, that impeaching a president is perhaps the most important duty that a member of Congress will ever have to consider. It's serious. As you can see watching the news, it's tumultuous, and it's very divisive for our country. So we do have to make certain that when a decision like that is made, it's not just a partisan exercise, and that there's clear evidence that the sitting president has committed a crime. However, in this situation, House Democrats have been planning on and working towards undoing the results of the 2016 election for more than 3 years. For more than 3 years. And I just want to stop a minute to remind you of something. When the Mueller investigation started, there were serious questions about whether this president colluded with a foreign government. I supported an inquiry into whether that had occurred. And so that was a particular case where I withheld a decision until that investigation had completed. We know how that turned out. There was no complete collusion whatsoever. But what we're seeing now, and this morning, the Democrats took one step closer towards impeaching the president, claiming that he has committed high crimes and misdemeanors. He has cheated in the 2016 elections. But what we're seeing is an attempt to remove the president, to overturn the will of the American people in a very, very political process. And I think it's a sham. Why? Because here's the facts. We had this transcript available to us from the time the impeachment started. The transcript that is the basis of this action. What does the transcript show? No linkage, no quid pro quo. And in fact, President Trump and Zelensky both say that there was no pressure. Ukraine, in fact, didn't even know that aid was held up at the time of the call. Ukraine never took any action to try to get aid released. And in fact, between July 18th, when aid was paused, and September 11th, when it was released, there were 5 interactions between President Zelensky and senior American officials. And not once did this come up. He was never tied to investigations in any of these discussions. So, my view, there was never anything here from the beginning. And to this day, the Democrats have not been able to explain what the president did that confirms he committed high crime misdemeanors and justifies impeaching him. They're simply trying to frame the president because they're afraid to face him in the next election. In fact, that's been said on the floor. Al Green, I heard him say it. He said, if we don't impeach this president, he might get reelected. It was even more clear on Tuesday when the Democrats brought in 3 very biased, quote-unquote, constitutional lawyers. They weren't in such a search of justice. They were in search of how to make a case to impeach the president to sell to the American people. Every one of the Democrats' star witnesses that have testified before Congress, every one of them have all said the same thing, that they had no firsthand evidence or knowledge of the president committing any crimes, any quid pro quo, or any bribery. Interestingly enough, none of the articles of impeachment the Democrat leadership presented today has anything to do with what they initially opened an inquiry into the president for. Nothing to do with it. Confirming that this has really been a political witch hunt. As I said in my newsletter last week, after reading the transcript of President Trump's call with President Zelensky of Ukraine, nothing in the call proved to be a quid pro quo, and nothing rose to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors constitutionally stated to impeach a duly elected sitting president. Hamilton warned of this day in the Federalist Papers. He was worried, as the Constitution was written, that one day impeachment would be used as a political process, purely a political process, to try to overturn the will of the American people. We can't allow that to happen. We cannot allow our political process to start weaponizing impeachment against political opponents. So thank you, Mr. Phillips. I appreciate the letter and look forward to talking with you soon.